Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my sister-in-law babysit my baby and being unwilling to hear her out? My husband and I had to be somewhere for our older child, so we asked my mother-in-law if she could watch our 3-month-old son for a few hours. She said of course. Unfortunately, when we went to drop him off, she wasn't home and one of my husband's sisters, Jane, 21, was instead. Apparently my mother-in-law wasn't going to be home for a bit, so she, Jane, agreed to watch our son for some time. I immediately said no because, well, Jane believes that babies don't feel anything. She thinks that they cry for no reason and we shouldn't respond to their cries ever for whatever reason. And that not responding won't have any effect on them. She thinks that anything we do to babies during this period of their lives will have absolutely zero effect on them in the future. She will often call them mindless too. My husband called his mom and we politely explained our concerns and then hung up because we were extremely busy already, and now we had to find another babysitter as well. I figured that was it until Jane came over extremely upset and in tears, insisting that she's not a bad person and that she would never do anything to hurt any kid. She then accused me of discriminating against her because she doesn't want/have kids like everyone else in the family. I told her straight up that I don't give a crap if she wants kids of her own, but I don't like her thoughts on how to care for babies specifically. Instead of trying to understand me, she doubled down and said that her way of dealing with babies makes sense and that I'm wrong and I'm just extremely sensitive in nature, so of course I don't get it. She kept arguing with me about how to take care of my baby, so I just asked her to leave and she blew up on me. My husband even told her to calm down and that it's not like we're preventing her from seeing our kids altogether, but she just went, "F you and your dumb kids," and left. Which, okay. But my mother-in-law is really annoyed with me because Jane is still very upset and I'm just wondering if I'm the a-hole? Like, I don't think I am, especially since no one lets her babysit for the same reasons, but I'm the first person to actually say no to her face and tell her why instead of making up an excuse, and perhaps I was too harsh. Top comments. Not the a-hole at all. You have told her why. She disagrees with how you are raising your child, so she cannot be alone with them. End of story. Different if she understood where you are coming from and agreed that she would of course do things your way, and then freaking out that you didn't trust her. She could be mad then. You would still be justified in the no, because you know how she feels, and alone, no one watching, she would test her theory. To mother-in-law, I have a living being that cries to indicate that something is wrong. This is the only way they communicate they are unhappy. Your daughter thinks this is not true and their cries mean nothing. They should not be cared for when they are crying. The thought of my baby, in distress, and being alone in that is not okay with me or your son. I am not being unreasonable. Her way of thinking is not only not the universal consensus, but completely not what I want in my child's world. I am a little shocked that you would defend her having a temper tantrum about this situation instead of telling her that of course we would not leave our child with anyone who could care less that they are crying and thinks they have no feelings. That is ridiculous. I need you on the baby's side, not on the one acting like a baby because she's wrong and doesn't like that she's wrong. Then let them be mad. This is truly ridiculous. For others to be involved and not be backing you up 100% is astonishing. Not the a-hole. The research into infant development is extensive and everything they experience is important. Tell Jane to do some actual research, and if she can find any science-based, peer-reviewed support for her view, you will at least listen. And tell mother-in-law that you care more about your innocent child's well-being than her entitled adult child's hurty feelings. That you will slay dragons to protect your child, and that sister-in-law is dangerous and any reasonable person knows it. Mother-in-law owes you an apology for planning to leave your baby with a child abuser. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents we are not having this conversation again? My 27 brother, 38, and sister-in-law are working abroad right now. My nephew, 12, mainly lives with my parents but spends the weekends with me, so they have time to themselves. He recently asked if I could buy him a copy of The Wealth of Nations. At first I wasn't sure if he would be able to comprehend it. But then I figured there's nothing inappropriate in the book. The worst that could happen is he doesn't understand and loses interest in the book, in which case I can take the book back and read it myself. As it turned out, he does like the book and actually manages to understand it. At least, the main principles. He discussed it with my sister, 35, a professor of economics, who is very impressed and called him very bright for his age. My parents, though, are convinced I pressured my nephew into reading the book. They think I'm trying to turn him into a bookworm like me. At first I simply denied it and told them he wants to know how the world works. He is their only grandchild, after all. I told myself they are just being doting grandparents and there's no reason to get into an argument about it. But they kept asking him if he actually really enjoys the book and questioning me, accusing me of pressuring him. They couldn't believe a 12 years old would enjoy that book. So I told them we are not having another conversation about this. Dad said I didn't have to be hostile and they were only being concerned for their grandkid. Top comments. Not the a-hole, your nephew is 12 years old, he's old enough to decide what he reads. I find it equal parts amusing and baffling why your parents are discouraging your nephew from pursuing his interests and reading a book. It's a weird grandparent flex. How dare you buy our grandchild a book they want to read? What the heck? Being a bookworm is somehow a bad thing? Sigh. I am truly sorry that this is happening. They are not doting, they are, well, kind of mean, if they are pressuring this child to fess up that you are trying to make him, gasp, into a bookworm who understands and is curious about the world around him. That is wrong. I mean, shame on you for doing such nonsense. Their concern is whack in my opinion. Not the a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to teach my dad's wife how to make my mom's pie? My mom had this pie she used to make all the time. It was the family favorite dish. My siblings, 7F, 6M, and I, 17M, love it. After mom died 2 years ago, I took over making it. Now my dad is remarried and his wife wants to learn to make the pie because she said it's a motherly thing to do, make your kid's favorite meal, and she feels like I'm getting in the way of her having that experience with them. I refuse to teach her how to make it. I told her I'm going to keep making it and giving it to my siblings, and it's an experience where I can tell them about mom and they can ask about her. She told me she's going to be their mom now and deserves to have the chance to do this for them. I told her I don't care and I'm not teaching her. My dad told me I should step back and let his wife step in and take over this kind of thing, and I'm the only one who knows it of the two of us. She tried a few times to remake it and it wasn't liked. She told me making something like that is a whole part of motherhood and I'm denying her. That I need to get out of her way of making it as my sibling's mom. She told me teaching her is honoring the family she wants to have. I'm still refusing to teach her and I get asked more each day because I'm closer to turning 18 and moving into the house my aunt owns nearby. My dad and his wife are more angry now than ever. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. I'm a step-parent. One of the fundamentals of step-parenting is understanding that you do not get to decide that you are the new parent. You play the role as best you can and it's up to the kids to decide whether or not you're their parent. You sure as hell don't get to insert yourself into any specific tradition that someone else began. You have to be invited. Opie replies. I wish my dad's wife had that same view. She can't have biological kids, so she's trying so hard to be my sibling's new mom, and she's freaking out that there are things she's not involved in, like my mom's pie. Not the a-hole. Sounds like your dad got married very quickly and without doing the work to prepare and consult with you guys to help you feel comfortable with it. If the pie is your thing, let her and your dad find another way to integrate her with the family. Opie replies. He married less than 2 years after mom died and it was very quick with how fast he rushed us knowing his wife. But he wanted my younger siblings to latch to her as a new mom. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to tell my siblings I'm being adopted? My siblings, 11F, 10M and 8F, and I, 15M, are in foster care. Our parent used me as a babysitter from a really young age, 6, with my siblings, and it got worse when our father went to prison. Our mother was almost always in her bed and refusing to leave it, or she'd leave the hours and come back whenever she felt like it. That was 3 years ago and I told a teacher about it and she reported it to CPS and they tried to get our mother to step up but she didn't want to. When we were taken, my siblings got super clingy and they refused to let me breathe. I asked if we could be separated and I was told we needed each other. I ended up running away from the foster home we were placed in together, and I ran away again when I was brought back. The social worker, who's still the social worker we have now, was pissed off that I wouldn't give it time and stay with that family. They were the only people who'd take all four of us together. But then the social worker's boss got involved after I left for the third time, and she insisted I should be separated from them if I wasn't going to stay. But my social worker insisted on mandatory bi-weekly visits. I moved to a few different foster families until I met the people I now think of as my parents. I was 13 when I met them. But they're the best parental figures I've ever had, and by far the best foster parents I've had in 3 years. We got really close. I started calling them mom/dad type nicknames, and I talked to them about the stress I feel when I see my siblings. They advocated for me to no longer have those bi-weekly visits, but the social worker overruled them. She insists that one day I'll regret being separated from them, and having some contact is important. A second social worker is now involved in our case, or with me at least, and I'm now eligible for adoption. My foster parents and I talked, and I told them I'd love for them to be my parents for real. My original social worker isn't too happy, but she can't stop it now. She tried talking me out of it and was reprimanded when I told the other social worker. My original social worker is refusing to tell my siblings I'm being adopted, and she said I need to tell them and that she will insist upon it. I told her she can't make me tell them, and I'm not dealing with the anger they'll have. My siblings are already angry I ran away until we were separated. But they're also still really clingy and intrusive in my personal space. So I know telling them I'm being adopted will make it worse, and I don't want to sit through 4 hours of that. My social worker told me to stop being so stubborn and cruel and think about my siblings above myself. My foster parents reported her to the other social worker. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. I'm a foster carer, and while I know why the caseworker keeps pushing your relationship with your siblings, she is going about it the wrong way. You absolutely shouldn't be the one to tell them that you're being adopted. They will have a complicated reaction to this, which is understandable, but the responsibility for helping them process this news should not be forced onto a child. This should be handled by either their therapist if they have one, or the caseworker or carers with advice from a therapist. I'm sure you've heard the term parentification, which is what your mom did to you as well as neglecting you. Your caseworker is still trying to hold you responsible for their emotional well-being. This isn't fair to any of you. The caseworker probably thought keeping you with your siblings would be better for their mental health, and it might have been, but not at the expense of yours. And the whole point of foster care is to allow you to grow up being cared for the way all children should be cared for, by responsible adults. That includes the eldest, parentified child. You deserve to spend your childhood being a child. And you probably would have been more likely to want to have a relationship with your siblings if the caseworker had given you a choice. I'm glad you found a good foster family who have welcomed you into their family. You deserve to be happy and to be parented instead of the parent for what is left of your childhood. And I hope your siblings are being well cared for as well, and they have trusted adults to help them come to terms with your adoption. This sounds a lot like your social worker is earmarking you to take custody of your siblings when you age out. Not the a-hole. Tell the other social worker that the first one is trying to force you to tell your siblings that you're being adopted. I think she'll get a written warning, and the second social worker will probably tell them. You deserve the best chance of a childhood. Report her again. Social worker not advocating for you. Write your congresswoman. Write your attorney general. You get adopted, ABD, move on. You cannot carry your parents' burden. Siblings not your responsibility. So glad you found a family. Get the most education you can. Move on to a happy life. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not bending over backwards for my parents in order to babysit my 18-year-old sister? My 32F parents and grandmothers are going on a week-long cruise starting on August 31st. They haven't mentioned anything about keeping tabs on my younger sister. Tonight, my mum texted me saying, "I really need for you to watch your sister." I told her that I'm going back to work September 2nd and will be gone from 5:30 a.m. and won't be back in town until 5 p.m., then I have a boot camp I'm dedicated to. I told her maybe she can stay with me so I can see her in the evenings and check in with her during the day. Apparently that isn't good enough. Maybe I was a bit blunt over text, but I honestly don't understand what she wants me to do. My sister is 18 and I physically can't be home until 5 p.m. My parents called me and I said she can stay with me so I can see her in the evenings and she won't have to sleep alone. My mum said, so she's just going to be alone, and I said, for most of the day, yes. And she said, wow, okay. My dad was in the background yelling at me. I am a people pleaser and my parents put a lot of their responsibilities on me as a child. They are used to me bending over backwards for them and putting my sister's needs before mine. This is probably the first boundary LV set. Anyway, this whole situation pissed me off and I said, this is wild. Make it make sense, which made them more mad. I got off the phone and blocked them for the night because what I'm not going to do is let them stress me out. I came a long way with my mental health for this. Am I the a-hole for not doing more and snapping at them? Is there something more I can do? Edited to add, she is not mentally or physically impaired in any way. She is a little immature, but fully self-sufficient and she generally doesn't make poor decisions. Top comments. Not the a-hole. It is important that you establish the simple fact that you are an adult with a job. If your parents believe that EIR their 18-year-old child, is she still in high school, needs supervision, then they needed to book someone to provide that service before they made their travel plans. If your parents leave their child alone, that is on them. OP replies. She graduated from high school a couple of months ago. I agree, it's like they assumed I would watch her. Why do your parents think your adult sister needs a babysitter for 3 days? Is your adult sister disabled in any way? OP replies. She is newly 18 and a bit immature. She is not disabled whatsoever. Not the a-hole. Unless your sister lacks the emotional maturity or has a history of dodgy acts, she's perfectly capable of doing whatever she wants. She doesn't even need to stay at your parents' house if she doesn't want to because she's legally an adult. The only reason she'd need someone around most of the time is if she can't take care of herself. OP replies. Agreed. She just turned 18 and is a little immature, but is responsible and self-sufficient. If I was still going to be out on leave, I'd have no problem spending a few hours with her a day. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that her new boyfriend can't bring his child to my wedding? Me, F33, is getting married soon, November 2024, which has been planned for the last 2 years. My sister, F36, has just split with her husband and started a new relationship with one of her colleagues, we will call him Brandon, who I have briefly met a couple times before but don't know very well. He's nice enough, but my FH has never met him and like I say, I don't really know him myself. My sister mentioned to Brandon that she is my maid of honor and that I will be getting married in November within the first week of their new relationship. Before my sister and her husband, let's call him Reese, split, they were both invited to the wedding, as they'd been married for 15 years, so Reese was a big part of the family. Brandon automatically assumed he was invited to the wedding in Reese's place, which I didn't like but sort of accepted that she'd want a +1, and Reese wouldn't want to come now anyway given the situation, so I let it go. She then informs me that Brandon has told his daughter Kelly, F10, who he co-parents with his ex, that they're both coming to my wedding, so Kelly is really excited. I reminded my sister that we are having a child-free wedding which was communicated to everyone who was invited to attend, as we ourselves don't have children, don't want children and so don't want children at our wedding, which all our family and friends have been fine with. I've met Kelly, and she is unfortunately a complete brat, and definitely not a child we would want at our wedding regardless of if we're having a child-free wedding or not. My sister thought our refusal was down to the cost of adding her as a guest when we've already reached maximum numbers, so initially offered to pay for her place. I told her it's not about the money but because firstly I don't like Kelly and secondly Brandon overstepped by assuming his child could come without even trying to talk to myself and my FH first. I also calmly told her that she knew we were having a child-free wedding and should have told him straight away to avoid this happening. As it's also not fair to our other friends and family members who have arranged childcare for their own children to respect our wishes. She's now calling me an a-hole because it's going to make things difficult for her when she tells him that he can't bring Kelly as she's excited about going to a wedding. I told her that wasn't my problem as I am not responsible for him trying to muscle in on a family event he wasn't even invited to in the first place. I've offered to talk to him for her, to keep the peace, But she said I'd just end up being more of an a-hole to him than I am already for telling her that her new boyfriend's child can't come to my wedding. So Reddit. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. You didn't have to tell her you don't like Kelly. It's enough that you're having a child-free wedding. It's not your problem he made this assumption. It's not your problem your sister didn't automatically correct him. Let her tell him. If he doesn't want to cone, so be it. If she decides to step down, let her. Do not give in for any keep the peace arguments. You will regret it. If you think he'll bring his daughter, make sure there's someone to turn them away from both the ceremony and reception. He may try the but she'll just eat from my plate trick. Not the a-hole. It's a child-free wedding. It's your day and a big one without family being jerks. And she is being a jerk. There's nothing else to talk about. It's your day and that's a stipulation. She overstepped also by assumption. She put herself in the awkward place. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.